path of knowledge is a valid path. There really are three main ways that energy creates itself into form, and that is through knowledge, through will, and through action. Will is this moving forward, the noticing outward. The moment that will is in existence, the object of will also has to exist. So will isn't just like the force of being that creates reality. Reality is created simultaneously alongside will. Will is that pressing outward or noticing outward or movement outward from the center of being into form, and a form that is already mirroring itself back again. Action is everything that moves. It's the oscillation, it's the power, it is the vibration, and it is the core of our vibrational being. And knowledge is the understanding of that. But for how long has knowledge been put down? Putting down knowledge is a way to stop our curiosity, a way to silence us and shut us down. We do this in so many different ways. Even in the yoga traditions and histories that I study, how many people are out there practicing and how many people are actually studying? There are very few people who consider reading the sacred texts to be a valid or valuable path, even though it is within those texts that the action, the vibration, emanates. So the texts themselves are transmitting. It is in those texts themselves where that quality of will starts to come through. This is true of all sacred texts. But we live in a time where we are so selfish that we think, I have the right, this is entitlement, I have the right to sit down and do a practice and get to the last chapter, get to the period at the end of the sentence without actually having to do the work, without having to read the texts, without having to learn anything about the tradition. But just if I show up, that's enough, and you need to tell me everything to the very end. But that's not how knowledge works. Knowledge is the process, not the goal. It's not like, tell me the period at the end of the sentence, tell me the last chapter, and then I'll get there and I'll cross the finish line, I'll check it off my list, I'll reach that state of enlightenment that I'm entitled to. It's not like that. This is life, and again, it is knowledge, action, it is all of these things, will. So the pulsation is itself creating, and the moment it comes out, the creation is there, the reflection is there. The light of consciousness moves out from us. It's then reflected back to us through statements like, I notice, I feel, I sense, I understand, I am curious, or I don't understand, but I'm still curious, hopefully, right? It's all of these ways, anyway, that we're contrasting with what's outside of ourselves, this like so-called objective reality. But what is it in the sacred scriptures that keeps us from picking up the books and actually reading them, right? So we'll say things like, well, according to this teacher that also didn't read the books, or according to that person. But nowadays, we've even lost our connection to any lineage that has teachers and a teacher of a teacher and a teacher of a teacher, because texts get transmitted, knowledge gets transmitted through lineages. And as it gets transmitted, it's like the water drains off the mountain from this direction and it drains off from that direction, and it comes from this direction and it comes from the other direction, and it starts to funnel into a river. And the deeper the lineage is, the more thought, the more love, the more attention has gone into any particular lineage, the bigger that river gets. And some lineages out there are these massive, beautiful, deep, raging rivers. They shimmer on the surface, they have texture, they shine with color and brightness. The moment you come near it, you hear the roar, you can get a sense of its power, right? So lineage streams are extremely powerful, and the texts themselves are the source of those lineage streams. It's the tributaries. And us being able to go back to a lineage and pick it up and read it, and it doesn't matter what the lineage is, This could be the lineage of Christianity with the mystics and the original text. This could be the lineage of yoga by reading beyond, let's call it like the two main Bibles of yoga, but actually understanding the wide braiding traditions of yoga and Tantra, but actually reading some of these texts and understanding what they mean, not from our perspective, but from this understanding that goes really far back from lineage. This is one of the ways to decondition ourselves, and it's following that path of knowledge and understanding that opens up knowledge into the self, because we are being reflected outward in so many different ways. And there are stories, there are ways that traditions are telling us, and look at this reflection in the mirror, and look at this one, and look at this story and this allegory. There's beauty in this, so why are we putting it down? Why are we staying in our little individual self, entitled as individuals, saying, I'm just gonna do it my own way, I deserve to know the end? What about the process? What about sitting down and saying, okay, what exactly does this mean? And what does this story mean for me? What is it in the process we can gain? This is the beauty of tradition. This is why tradition and storytelling represents the divine feminine, because the divine feminine is not about this end purpose, this end goal, this path of entitlement, this path of power. The divine feminine, which is word itself, right? The divine is the word. The divine is the Shakti. The divine is the emanation of vibration. And as that word comes out, it takes that will and that action and that knowledge, and it weaves through right into all aspects of reality. And it is in that divine feminine aspect of word that we begin to reflect back again and understand ourselves again. In the Genesis, it says, and then God spoke, let there be. That and he spoke. The tool he's using, speaking, is that word. So word is primary to being. Word is the vibration that comes out and takes will, that takes form. If God speaks, then God is already willing, and through what? And through which power? Through the feminine, because the feminine is the word. So using that word is part of our awakening. It's part of reclaiming the heart. I highly urge you to pick up any text, any piece of art, but something that has a teaching lineage, where a teacher and a teacher's teacher, and you can understand and you can listen to the river. That doesn't mean you live in that river. That doesn't mean that you have to stay in that river forever. But just to understand a river really deeply is a huge way back into the heart. It's like this fast track back in. So let's come back to lineage. Let's come back to having teachers. Let's come back to honoring texts, really honoring texts and text traditions where people have chewed on and thought about, built practices on, practices that they've tested and rubbed and burned and pushed and pressed and tried again and again and again and developed as the human being. This is one of the ways to reclaim ourselves. This is one of the ways to bring our curiosity back. And we can do it in a way that does not serve the goal, that does not serve this like sit down and don't ask questions, but that does the exact opposite. Stand up, be in yourself, ask questions, read. You have the power to do that. You have the power to read. You have the power to enact your beautiful will, to enact your knowledge, and to take action.